In everyday life, we often experience cities as beautiful. We revel in the dizzying heights of Chicago, or in the way light reflects on the waters and windows of Utrecht, or perhaps the hustle and bustle of Juven and the feeling of losing track of what is up and what is down. However, the city is only a marginal topic in aesthetics, the branch of philosophy dealing with beauty. In this video, I will talk about possible reasons for this disconnect between the interests of ordinary people and the activities of professional philosophers. Plus, I will talk about developments in urban aesthetics that have been happening in the past decade or so. So the field most closely related to urban aesthetics is that of architecture. And architecture was considered to be at the bottom of the hierarchy of the arts in the history of philosophy. Kant and Hegel thought that art has intrinsic value. And because architecture also has a functional value, meaning that we use buildings to reside in them, for instance, it is of lesser value. So because we value art for its own sake, we often go to museums with the express purpose of contemplating paintings, for instance. But we hardly ever really contemplate the city. This is usually reserved for tourists who have the leisure to contemplate the skyline of a city, for instance. To most people, the urban landscape registers as a kind of a background to their everyday activity, as for instance when we're late to a bus and we're running to catch it, and this kind of flashing backdrop of a city just registers at the edge of our vision. So because, for instance, paintings were considered to be a superior form of art to architecture, cities and their beauty was evaluated according to the standard of paintings. So for example, the ancient Greeks understood beauty to be defined by order and harmony. For instance, Aristotle said, the chief forms of beauty are order and symmetry and definiteness. And in the Renaissance, when all these ancient thinkers were being rediscovered in Europe, ideal cities were being built using strict geometrical standards, precisely because of Aristotelian ideals of beauty. And this was also the heyday of linear perspective. So the cities were designed to look breathtaking from a particular angle. So the beholder is supposed to stand at a very specific point and to have a very specific view on the piazza and to see the geometry of the lines of the buildings and the street in a particular way in order to perceive its full beauty. This celebration of geometry had its climax in modernism. So Le Corbusier's ideal cities, for instance, his La Vie Radieuse, is created in a strictly geometrical manner, and it's supposed to contribute to the equal distribution of sunlight. So contrary to this aesthetic of perfectly straight lines, there was other developments as well. Already at the end of the 19th century, Camillo Sitte pleaded for a more street-eye observer's approach to the aesthetic experience of the city. He drew attention to the fact that nobody experiences the city by looking at the plan of the city. In the 1940s, Walter Benjamin called architecture a truly democratic art. We do not need to pay the entrance to go to a museum to experience the aesthetics of a city. Rather, we experience it in the hustle and bustle of everyday life while being jostled by crowds. He says we experience architecture in a state of distraction, as I said, for instance, while running to the bus. It is only tourists that train their gaze on the city as if it were a painting. Most of us experience it while on the go, kinesthetically. Kinesis means movement and aesthetics is perception. And it is no accident that the character of the flaneur that Walter Benjamin was so interested in was so central to the urban imaginary of the 20th century. It is by walking or biking or roller skating or driving that we truly stitch together these little snippets of experience of the city. And it is especially this rhythm of the city that its experience is exhilarating. And it is in motion and on the go that the city becomes a specific aesthetic object for us. So in the past decade or so, more systematic attention was given to urban aesthetics. So, for instance, people who were working in the field of environmental aesthetics in the 90s started getting interested in the field of urban landscape. And the same is true of people who worked in everyday aesthetics. In his essay on architectural aesthetics, Abel Franco argues that we judge spaces as aesthetically pleasing. He says that we judge whether and to which extent they appear to us as a means to realize and experience possibilities which are significant for us, where significant for us means significant in relation to our unique and individual ideal of life. So these possibilities can be very particular, very specific to each person. So he says, for instance, I'm looking for the quality of the experience of reading Baudelaire in the cafe at this particular moment in my life. So his aesthetic evaluation of a cafe includes the question whether this cafe could afford to him such an experience. Another example Franco uses is that of experiencing an apartment as uniquely placed within a particular network of spaces, that is, within a unique network of possibilities. So the beauty of an apartment is not just its looks, but it's also the way it affords me to drop by a cool cafe on my way back from work, or the way that its location allows me to jog by the river in the morning. So certainly some cities take our breath away with their vistas, with their beautiful monumental buildings and skyscrapers. But more often than not, we are exhilarated by the rhythm of life they provide, by the possibilities of experience around every corner, by the kind of choose-your-own-adventure quality to life they provide. Thanks for watching this far. This video is part of a series on aesthetics that I'm planning. So you may have noticed that this video was kind of Eurocentric in my discussion of Aristotle and Kant and Walter Benjamin. But I do plan to create another video on the aesthetic of Asian cities, which is very different and which has very different standards of beauty. So on my channel, I generally like to take questions from everyday life and from current affairs and to discuss them from a philosophical angle. So if you're into that kind of thing, hit the notification bell and then you will be informed when my new topics come out. Thanks and have a great week, and may our cities open up again soon. Bye.